For me, the watershed moment occurred in February 2020. In the US, coronavirus hit, and our president closed off travel from China. Then in March 2020, the US suspended travel from Europe to the United States. And I realized at that moment that the world of travel was about to approach a day of reckoning. By October 2020, it was clear that travel leaders really need to think about future-proofing, working differently to think about the path forward and really commit to change. I'm Andrea Cates, and I'm with Futureproofing Next, and we help companies get ahead of the future and get on a new path to growth. And I'm on a mission to provide some practical tools today so that we can all be inspired by new ideas that are in the travel market, understand some cross-industry inspiration that can help us think more broadly, and present a pyramid of possibility so that we can really move from what we need to do in terms of being boring to being a little bolder, maybe be bulletproof. And if we're really great at this, we'll be able to work together and think much more broadly and truly future-proof. I'm very pleased to be here today as part of the Phocuswright conference on To the Brink and Back, and hopefully we'll get back and rise up even higher. So let's just say it has been, by all accounts, a crazy year for the travel industry. And yet, there's some really interesting paradoxes. So on the one hand, we have people suspended in animation and not able to move, go where they want to, see the people they care about, and see virtually becoming reality the people that they work with. Life has changed totally. And yet what we know is that there's really a longing, a huge pent-up demand. For instance, American Express's CEO just said that he's seeing a big pent-up demand in travel, and there's even new opportunities, new industries that are forming around travel. People from outside of the travel industry are giving us ideas. People from inside the industry are forming new alliances and partnerships. And we're also looking at ways to pivot and find new business models so that you'll see, for instance, live streaming travel is here to stay, according to the Trip.com co-founder, and saying that Chinese business travel is almost fully recovered. So what we know is that it's not good enough to win in a snail race. And we have to think about faster and bolder ways to get to this future-proofed future. So what is future-proofing exactly? Well, it's really to see ahead of market shifts, learn quickly, whether it's through technology or innovation, and act with full commitment. And today we'll learn about how we get in our hearts and our minds and our souls where we would like to go next. And I want everyone to challenge ourselves to think, do we want to do something very significant that's somewhat boring? In other words, do something that's a platform move, or maybe digitize something that we're already doing and do it better? Do we want to be bold and maybe get rid of some of that technical debt that we've been building up and address it finally and fully? Maybe we want to bulletproof. We want to do something that's such a great chess move that it's kind of checkmate. And then this highest level that we'll keep talking about is future-proofing. And by that, what we'll look at is ways that people are thinking very differently about a long-term future that's much more innovative. So I'm inviting you to envision a year from now, say it's November 2021, and we're looking at you as a person that can really affect game-changing travel headlines. And so I'll be sharing with you some headlines we've just seen, but imagine a year from now, you've made something amazing happen, and I'm going to be citing that for our whole industry. So here's a practical approach. So let's start with boring. By boring, I don't mean it's bad. I think that there's a lot that can happen for the whole industry, and I've been inspired by companies that, by the way, you've at the Phocuswright people have turned me on to, which was Journera. And that's a way to finally make a seamless experience throughout all of our travel, whether it's our rental car or our booking or our flight or our hotel. I mean, why can't it be seamless? We've known for years that we were capable of doing this. Could this be a moment where we do something somewhat, quote, boring by piecing together things that have been apart and making it much more seamless from a customer experience perspective? Okay, so now let's think about, could we do something more bold? And so that looks like things, for instance, people from outside of our strict travel industry like Industrious, who's partnering with proper hotels to develop co-working, because we're all having a really hard time with this work from home, live at work, 24/7 work life. And so why not have a local hotel partner with people who are really desperate for a quiet room, for some headspace, for time away from the homeschooled children? Maybe it's an opportunity to have a great business meeting and a retreat, but in a hotel close to your home so that you're not having to travel the long distance. I've also been really excited by companies like Mint House. And Mint House was able to take touchless and being able to check in a touchless way. A few years ago, people were not comfortable with touchless because they were afraid of the biometrics. But now what we've learned is that biometrics are actually fine. And as bookings disappeared, there were companies moving into the new nooks and crannies of opportunity to give a different experience. And touchless made a lot more difference when people were afraid of being infected by COVID. There are also companies like Citizen M, and they've developed something called Global Passport. And I believe that we can all be inspired by ideas like that, where we can almost have a club feel, that we can belong. Now, I know a lot of people try subscriptions, and we'll talk about that a little later, but this is really a chance for us to belong in a new way as a global citizen to lots of properties, so that if we do move from one to the next, we have a seamless feeling of travel. And then, of course, I really love Germ, Falcon, and Maidbot, because we have all been waiting for Rosie the robot from the Jetsons to come into our lives and finally be practical. And so when it comes to a way to sanitize aisles in an airplane, or when it comes to the ability to clean rooms with robots, and there are also robots that are doing room service in hotels. And there are lots of ways that these machines that we kept thinking were in the future have come to the present to really address some of the issues with the travel concerns. So then we get to some things that are bulletproof. And what does that really mean? Well, you have to look at data. And I love the fact that Phocuswright has so much data at their fingertips. You know, they go into the field and find the pulse and sense what is happening in the market. And what we at Futureproof do is figure out, what are you going to do about that? So if you take the data that says that there's a rising comfort, for instance, with biometrics, especially with business travelers, it used to be creepy. What will they do with our data? And really, in a hotel, do I need to have everything be kind of without a person? But now, because of COVID, people have become much more open-minded and much more flexible. And so what that means is that there are companies like Amadeus, where in Norwegian airports, they take the lead in terms of touchless travel with technology. And Clear, which we have experienced in airports as a way to make it faster through, in the United States, the TSA. Now there is an expanded vision for what Clear can do, so that the biometric information can not just speed up our travel, but actually provide deeper and richer experiences for us to be able to feel that travel is a possibility again. And then I also love some of the bold moves where the partnerships are happening. So my question to you is, who might you partner with? United Airlines created Clean Plus, where they established a new standard of cleanliness because people were so afraid of getting on planes. And so there was a partnership with Clorox and Cleveland Clinic called United Clean Plus. And it strikes me that there is opportunity for all of us to look around and think, who might we partner with next to really drive our company to a broader audience and a higher level of comfort and a much better traveler experience? And that brings us to the idea of future-proof. And I really loved when Phocuswright came out with an article that talked about leading a movement, because the Healthy Sail Panel recommended 74 steps to reduce COVID-19 risk on cruise ships. What could be more scary to a traveler than getting on a cruise ship at the beginning of the COVID-19 virus? And proactively, when leaders from different companies get together, and even if they're competitors, they figure out what is the higher goal. What kind of movement can they lead so that people are truly feeling secure and safe, whether it's on one line's cruise ship or another's? And the mindset of being open-minded and reaching out, in here we say across the aisle, is a big idea. And to me, it's the best way to think about the first step of future proofing. The second step of future proofing is to really reimagine the whole experience. And, why is Johnny Ive suddenly consulting for Airbnb? To reinvent the whole fundamental experience for the customer in Airbnb. And then you look at Disney, and they've cross industry been inspired in terms of their streaming business. Their wake-up call was, we're Disney, people aren't going to come to the theme parks. The physical travel was limited. So what could you do as Disney? Well, streaming was a big call, and they turned on a dime and developed a very robust streaming business. Now, some of us think that virtual reality is a little out of hand or out of reach, but in fact, virtual reality, virtual experiences in travel, and all of these streaming opportunities give us, that's how we're together at a conference. Travel has changed, and this is a chance for all of us to really take advantage of it. And so my final point in future proofing is the idea of subscription. Now, in the old days, subscriptions were loyalty programs. And I think that if we future proof, we can do better than that. There's a book that I didn't write called The Forever Transaction by Robbie Kellman Baxter. And she says that throughout the COVID-19 outbreak, 89% of companies with forever transaction models, true beyond a loyalty program, but a true subscription like a Peloton for travel, retained their customers during the outbreak, 89%. And so what are the kinds of ways that we can provide a brand relationship to our companies, even if they're not necessarily getting on our planes, staying in our rooms, or using our rental cars quite yet? So that brings me to the final part of this, which is to get us back to envisioning. So in 2021, in November, you will be somehow creating a game-changing travel headline. Imagining you made it happen. Well, we have some news. From the world of Future Proofing Next, we know that the pandemic is here to stay. Most people think that it will not be leaving even by January 2021. So probably by next November, there'll still be some signs of change in terms of how travelers look at this. But what we really recommend is that you be boring. Make sure everybody gets back to work well. That you be bold, that you actually redesign the work and rethink things. Can you be a workplace and a hotel? Can you combine with another company to offer an end-to-end service? Can you be touchless? Can you be seamless? Finally, the reimagining the future, where you become some sort of a subscription, or what can you do besides remove the middle seat? How can you stretch beyond that? And then finally, this notion of future proofing, like leading the future, where you do the creative, you think the way that Disney and Airbnb and the Healthy Sail Panel thought, to really stretch beyond and sit in a room with people you haven't worked with before and think bigger. And so what I know is that the biggest internal barriers to doing this are usually insufficient culture. We don't sit down and do this. Instead, we sit down with a 5-year plan. We sit down with quarterly earnings. We sit down with SWOT. I'm inviting you to stop that for now. I'm inviting you instead to future-proof, to think about where we can be a year from now and work backwards and be bold there. I know that the levers of change are in your product, in the customer experience, in the ecosystem, in the business model. How can you transform? I know that there are 52 ways that we have discovered that people are working right now to make these changes happen. And I encourage you to pick one of the 52 and commit to it fully. There are also technologies you can take advantage of. Not everybody has to do AI. Not everybody has to have robots, but guys, it's time for a perfect time for a technology move, a bold, big technology move. So then finally comes the shameless promotion of the book. Sean Moffat and I wrote a book called Futureproofing Next. And the core of this is we are not victims of the future. We are leaders of organizations that can shape our future. And so I invite you to commit fully to one thing, something that's inspired you from what I've said, something that's inspiring you from the field. What is it that you see today? And what is it that you're going to do when you sit down, not with a SWOT analysis, but with a future-proofed model? Sit down and say, what is it that we can do to be boring, to be bold, to be bulletproof, and hopefully to be future-proof. I invite you to buy our book. We have the link that I hope you'll click on so that you can get in touch with us and buy the book, Futureproofing Next. We also love to do workshops, so shameless promotion is we would love to work with you. We would love to work with Phocuswright and you to do a future-proofing workshop with you and your team. And finally, we hope whether you work with us or you work on your own, we really believe that this is the moment to get ahead of the changes in our market and redirect toward a new path to growth. Thank you.